Hi guys, I'm just going to put a little trigger warning here at the beginning because I'm going to kind of be talking about light and dark and good and evil, and some people might find that upsetting or disturbing. And I'm not intentionally here trying to disturb people or cause fear, but it's a subject I think that is interesting and that warrants some discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. If you'd rather not listen to it, you might want to skip this episode. Perhaps you want to even do some kind of shielding exercise or ritual before you entertain this content as well. Hi guys, it's John here again. I'm recording this on Wednesday, September 29th, 2021. I have already posted 3 videos today. I just had a window of opportunity where I have this privacy, and I might not have it again for a while. And I also have a major astrological transit going on right now that is certainly going to lend a lot of energy to this for me. So it's a big one, actually. For the next week or two, quite fascinating. So I'm not sure that I'll actually post this today because I don't want to overwhelm my massive 27 followers. But I'm going to record it. And this is one of those subjects that I was getting some resistance about speaking about from my spiritual guides or whatever. And but then I found myself in quite a positive state. And I actually just saw the number 444 on my phone a minute ago, which says the angels are surrounding me. So I think I have the support, and I don't have a strongly negative feeling about doing this. I want to talk about light versus dark, and I certainly do not want this to inspire fear in people, because that's not my intent. I'll explain that more in a minute. But why I want to talk about this is that I have seen contradictory information about this subject out there, and from other people who channel and comment on these kinds of things. Quite contradictory, like, does evil exist or not, kind of thing, that whole question. And I've heard some people say that there's no such thing as an evil spirit. Now, that may be true, but there are absolutely, unquestionably, based on the reality and history, nobody can dispute that very evil things have occurred on this planet. I'm not going to articulate or list them, partially because I'm afraid of triggering filters on this and other platforms by saying certain words. I don't know how much of a concern that should actually be, but I don't really need to go into examples. I mean, anybody who's even very superficially aware of human history, and in particular the 20th century, and if not like the 1930s in particular, and early 1940s, is aware of some extremely negative examples of the evils that people can do to each other. And so, I think evil or darkness is a continuum. There's people can do really bad things that aren't like necessarily 100% intentional, and then you can go all the way to it was the intention to inflict pain and suffering on somebody, and to even extend it, it is a very deliberate act of evil. And that doesn't mean that those souls or those beings that do such things are irretrievable or damned to eternity, to be in hell, kind of thing. But nobody, we also think about like trafficking and some of the things that occur to children, and people who are innocent and have no they have no guilt associated with them. So again, the point of all that is just to say that, look, if we look, and stuff is going on right now, let's face it, that falls within at least my definition of evil. So we can agree that it occurs and it exists here on this planet right now, and that it has for probably a very long time. Whether those individuals who are doing those acts themselves are fundamentally evil is kind of a deeper or more mysterious question. And like I said, some people would say yes. There's two paths. There's what they used to say in the past was the left-hand path and the right-hand path. I think the left hand was considered inferior to the right. So I don't have a prejudice against people who are left-handed at all. But it was described that way, that people or beings can choose one or the other. and maybe some of these beings actually don't originate here. Like, who knows for sure, right? But now, and then there's also my own personal experience. I have definitely I have had direct experiences with the darkness in people, and I know for a fact that can be quite powerful. There's some people who carry darkness within them, and this may just be as a result of unresolved trauma or wounding, and it could even be past life stuff. But there's no doubt that some people can under certain circumstances express aspects of themselves that are significantly dark, like where they actually desire to harm others. And even like I said before, even more extreme levels would be those who take pleasure from causing suffering and pain to others, and they exist as well. And then there's other levels, like just the people who are just completely narcissistic and don't give a crap about the welfare of others, and even try and capitalize on that and take advantage of it. That's another level of darkness, and so on. There's very many different levels. And also, I will add this, that I myself have had many direct experiences with the dark side, in the form of, let's say, encounters with them, and in some cases, attacks by them towards me. And in some cases, these encounters or attacks were shared experiences with others who perceived the exact same conditions and circumstances that I did. So they were shared experiences. So how do you explain that? You can't just say that, oh, this is my imagination, this is, or I'm attracting these things because I did something shitty in a past life or something like that. Well, I know people who are quote unquote innocent and I was in my youth, really. So how do you explain that? It doesn't. Some people would also say that, your own energetic state is what attracts that to you. And like I said, I have had shared experiences with other people who I wouldn't describe as people who are fear-based at all. In fact, I actually studied with a mystery school for a few years quite intensely, and the whole sort of raison d'etre for that organization was about combating the dark side directly. And there, these kind of organizations they're not very public, but they have existed for centuries. Now you could argue that is part of the Piscean age paradigm that we are leaving behind. And no doubt, if the energetic state of the planet Earth increases to a certain point, I would expect logically that it would be much more difficult for entities or energies that are on the negative side of the equation to manifest or get involved or interfere with this place and us, therefore. But I have had direct experiences with entities that were extremely powerful and definitely dark. Now, it is said, and because I have in my previous video where I was talking about enlightenment and spirituality versus the Great Awakening and Ascension, I was talking a little bit about sort of the traditional path to enlightenment or spiritual development. And in those schools, and I use that term broadly to kind of cover, all the people who are doing teaching in that area, and much of that comes from an Eastern perspective. They acknowledged this, and they took steps and measures to prevent themselves and disciples and so forth from being influenced by negative entities. And a lot of them originated on the astral level or existed there, but some who were more advanced and more powerful, were not just sort of your difficult, or what's the right word I'm looking for? Entities that are just interested in screwing around with you to make you have a bad day, kind of thing. There were levels of on the dark side that are very powerful beings, and so they acknowledged that, and like I said, took steps to sort of protect themselves from it. I don't. I'm not sure I should go into great levels of detail about my own personal experiences because I'm not sure it would be helpful or beneficial, and I don't even really want to summon those energies by even focusing on them too much. The main thing is, I'm kind of interested in what other people think about this because, again, there is conflicting perspectives out there, and they both can't be true, obviously. So, I guess what I'm saying is that I'm willing to entertain the fact that evil doesn't exist outside of the third dimensional reality. I'm willing to entertain that or consider it, but it definitely conflicts with my own experience and the experience of many people I know. So I can think of like many, many, many examples where I've had to deal with negative energies that were not of the incarnate variety. And they weren't just nuisance kind of things. They go beyond that. I definitely had those too. I have had, there was one point in time where I had an energetic attachment, which was removed. Because I went through a very difficult emotional period, which was separation from somebody I was very close to, and as a result of being in that sort of very sad or depressed state for a while, I had one of these things. I dealt with it myself because when I was made aware of it, it was fairly easy to deal with. But for some time, I didn't realize that was going on, and I've had it, for years. I was really into crystals, and actually got into a lot of exotic crystals, like stuff that you just don't find commonly. And I had a lot of experiences with crystals where, for example, there were some I just couldn't cleanse, and I had to get rid of them because they had negative energies in them. Despite all my knowledge and expertise about dealing with that sort of thing, it was just easier to ditch them. Some I actually dropped into the middle of the Ottawa River so they would never inflict their energy on anybody else. I could go on and on and on about this sort of stuff. I'm kind of interested to see what other people think. Yes, on the very high dimensions, there's just nothing but pure unconditional love, but we don't spend a lot of time there, and at least while we're incarnated. And I'm not alone in my perspective, and this is a really interesting subject, mostly just because there are these polar or opposite perspectives on it. One says they don't really exist, and then another says, yeah, sure they do. Like, logically, how could they not? It may be one of those subjects that just never is completely resolved. It may also be a matter of perspective. This is this is kind of a contentious issue. It's an interesting one to discuss as long as we can do it kind of from a loving place and not not let it bring our energy down or frighten us or whatever. I myself I have actually, just to add one more thing, I have had direct experience with some very, very powerful negative beings, and when these occurred, I was not afraid because I knew as long as I didn't accept what they were offering or trying to convince me to do, that they couldn't harm me because I have free will. Now, so I'm able to do that, whereas some other people might get highly triggered and then get into an anxious state and then get into a fear state, and then who knows, right? Or you're doing drugs or something like that, which I don't do, where you lose your shields are really down and you don't know how to protect yourself, right? That's one of the reasons why drugs, certain types of drugs, and spiritual exploration really don't mix, because unless you're in a very protected environment, it can be kind of a bit dangerous. Actually, I listened to what I've recorded again so far, and a couple things I want to tack on here. One is that it has crossed my mind that maybe there are certain people, like for example in the psychic community, who are just extremely well protected, and they just never see the darker aspects of entities and so, or darker entities and so forth, because they lack they're just shielded from being able to perceive those things. That is a possibility. I don't know if it's true or not. Also, just another thing I want to add is that in the past it was kind of recognized that those on the spiritual path would be sort of tested along the way, and that the idea is that the more light you carry, the more you kind of stand out in a crowd, and the more attention you attract. You can in a way become a more of a target. And there's also the notion that people who carry a lot of light are more of a threat to the status quo than those who don't. And so the dark side, if the dark side, say for example, is trying to preserve this status quo on the planet, because it's like a food source for them, where they thrive on chaos and fear and the negative emotions, that they want to suppress those who pose a threat to the status quo. And that would be people who come here or carry a lot of light. So, I've certainly experienced a lot of situations where people have, from my perspective, been under energetic attack from non-incarnate entities. Again, I don't want to arouse fear in people. But if I was to just simply deny all of my own experience and the shared experiences I've had with other people, I would be denying reality, and I can't. I'm just not willing to do that. So this podcast probably falls more into the realm of my own. Well, no, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say that it's not coming from a source above me, because, see, what I think kind of happens a lot is that Spirit doesn't want us to kind of focus on the negative for reasons I described in the video where I talked about things that Spirit doesn't want me to say. That does not necessarily mean that those things don't exist. It just means they don't want us to focus on those things too much, because it brings down our energy. And some people are very prone to fear. I'm not one of those myself. But there are those who can quite easily be frightened and get into a fear state. And so, like I said, just because Spirit doesn't want to focus on something doesn't mean it doesn't exist or that it's not real. All right, that's probably it. So thanks again for everything. And if anybody has anything to say or add, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, take care and don't dwell on the negativity. All right, bye.